Playfest is a yearly 9-day festival at the beginning of May in Duns in Berwickshire that celebrates new writing and champions emerging artists. We're bringing brand new theatre to the borders. I'm your host, actor, writer and Duns Playfest trustee Jamie Main, and in each episode I'll be talking to one of the writers, volunteers, trustees, performers or crew members who help make Duns Playfest happen. This is the second of 3 special episodes which were recorded live at Duns Playfest 2026. So without any further ado, let's go on with the show!
We're ready on our side. You both feeling ready? Grand.
Hello and welcome back to the Duns Playfest podcast. We are live in the Cadet Hall during Duns Playfest. It's very exciting. And today I am joined by Louise Stephens, who is the creative director of Playwright Studio Scotland. Thanks for joining me today, Louise.
Thanks for having me.
Just to start off this conversation, let's go back to the beginning. So what first sparked your passion for theatre?
I can't say that I grew up seeing a lot of theatre. I grew up in Edinburgh, but I guess obviously people from other parts of the country, when they hear you grew up in Edinburgh, assume that you were sort of at the theatre every August.
Yeah.
Seeing loads of things year round, which is not probably, I would say, most people's experience if they grew up in the city. So I definitely kind of came to theatre a little bit later. I actually, I had seen plays. We've been taken to see plays at school. I remember theatre and education shows coming right into our school. But I remember seeing an adaptation of Mice and Men at the Lyceum. That's probably the first thing I remember seeing. And then after that, I suppose why I sort of ended up in theatre was that I knew the area of thing that I was interested in. I thought maybe it was in publishing or maybe it was in prose or something, but I was interested in kind of helping writers write their work.
Okay.
And then I found out there was a job doing that in theatre, and it's called dramaturgy. So I went and did a course on that, and then I was lucky enough to get a job, and I've been working in the theatre ever since.
Brilliant. So for anyone who doesn't know, and for myself, because I'm slightly unclear, what actually is a dramaturg? What does that role entail?
So the way I do it is it's about asking questions of a concept when a writer first comes up with it. It's about supporting the development of that play in its form and in its ideas and in its content. And I suppose it's a version of being a kind of supportive, critical friend to both the play and the playwright as it goes.
So you've worked as a dramaturg for many theatre companies. I've done my research. The Traverse, the Royal Court Theatre, the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, and the National Theatre of Scotland, to name a few. So what would be some of the highlights doing all of that work?
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is I worked freelance, I worked in-house, helping make new plays. And I suppose it's hard to kind of pick out a highlight because a lot of the time when you're a dramaturg, part of what you're doing is kind of planting seeds that grow later on. So you might have a conversation with a writer that doesn't kind of bear fruit for many years or for months or weeks, or you might feel the effect of it that day. So I guess the real sort of highlight for me has been the situations under which writers say something to me either at the time or much later that is really helped that process, or you really unlocked something about the play for me, or of course it's really nice when work that you do ends up being recognised, winning awards, things like that. But theatre is very much, as you all know, like a team sport, and I guess the best way to approach dramaturgy is that you're doing that as part of a bigger team, and you're passing the ball between you, some other sport metaphor. So it's always great when work. I think there's a thing that you can feel when work really kind of flies, like when it's achieving its purpose and its form. It's like meeting the audience are enjoying it. And when that happens, I think that's the highlight of every production.
And to know that you play a small part in that must be really rewarding. Just see that work kind of take shape and.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, for me, I go, well, the writer is the main component.
Yes.
Like, we can all have disagreement about whether that's true or not. Like, there's lots of players in it, but without the writer of new work, there is nothing to work on. So whenever I feel like I've helped them in some way, then that's the working bit for me.
So can you tell anyone a bit about Playwright Studio Scotland and what it does to support playwrights?
Yeah, so Playwright Studio Scotland is a development organisation for playwrights, and the purpose of the organisation is to help playwrights in all sorts of ways. That includes practically by giving them bursaries or running workshops about the practice of playwriting. It's also, I guess, about giving advice and about networking them to the wider structures across the UK and beyond. So our role is solely developmental, as in we don't stage plays, but the advantage of that, I guess, is that the space that we can make is it's not about necessarily having to focus on a specific output. It's about you finding the right way and place for your play to exist. So it can be quite an exploratory place.
So you are the creative director of Playwright Studio Scotland. How did that come about?
So I went for a job interview and they were like, "We're hiring you." But before that, yeah, I suppose I had, because I had worked in dramaturgy for about 15 years at that point, I'd been interested in going, what's the next step? One thing about working as a dramaturg, literary manager, which are sort of different versions of the same thing, is there are very few jobs doing that. I'd worked in some amazing places, so I was going, what's the next thing I could do with those skills? And I had actually first come into contact with Playwright Studio when I was studying dramaturgy in 2006, 5, 6. And I had done a placement at Playwright Studio. So 17 years later, I think it was, I went for the job and got it. But I had I conceived of the role as sort of a big scale dramaturgy for everyone, because I guess all of the work that we do has a dramaturgical bent to it. By that, I mean that everything that we're doing is trying to serve writers making their best work. So it's like, well, that's a really different scale of impact.
Just working on one production.
Yeah. So I thought and hoped that I could contribute something there from both the networks that I have and the experience I have sort of developing new work. So that was 5 years ago now. So yeah.
So Playwright Studio Scotland kind of fathered Duns Playfest. That's kind of how I like to look at it. Back in 2019, when it partnered with Duns Players and this festival was born. So why are platforms like this festival important to the work that Playwright Studio Scotland does?
So I would say that the importance of local theatre it's important to the whole infrastructure in Scotland. So people having access to art near them is important for the entire infrastructure of theatre, because if you never come into contact with the form, then you would never understand what you might be able to contribute to it.
Yeah.
So I guess throughout the UK, and Scotland, there are many people making theatre themselves and they're in their local communities. And I guess what we can hopefully do when we come and support the festival, interact with it, and do things like this, hopefully what we can do is, I don't know, bring a different perspective or bring some craft knowledge that people might benefit from. So, there's an event that we're doing tomorrow with Morgan Young about the craft of playwriting, and I guess just putting those two things in contact are always useful, I think.
No, you could have touched on that there, but in what ways are Playwright Studio Scotland collaborating with Duns Playfest this year?
So we have, I think tonight we have a free writing section, which anyone can drop pen on and just do some writing, try and get out of your own head, just make some work. There's a structure there for us to work together for 45 minutes. Tomorrow, as I say, at I think it's 3 o'clock. There is the question and answer with Martin Young, who's a very successful Scottish playwright. And other than that, I'll be seeing some shows, running around, catch me if you can.
Fantastic. We're going to get on to the big, deep questions now, so there's yourself. Why is theatre important to wider society?
Well, we can talk about that for about 4 hours.
Yeah,
I think that spaces, community spaces, public spaces, analytical spaces, storytelling spaces are fundamentally important to humans. So why is theatre important today? Was that your question?
to wider society. Yeah.
Society. It's a place that you can ask yourself questions of what you think about the world. For me, so if you come and see a story and there are things you don't like in it or characters you don't like, it's an invitation to ask why or to look at your own. I think anyway. I mean, I think for me, theatre is one of the best forms because you can be both introspective. You can be introspective at the same time as having a communal experience.
Yeah.
You know, there's been a lot of talk recently that I've read anyway about sort of third spaces in society and how important they are, like places basically that are not your work or your house, places where you interact with other people. And for me, theatre has the perfect combination of interaction and storytelling because we're experiencing something together, but I don't have to talk to you. So perfect. I get to sit in the dark. That's why I get so upset when people try and make me join in theatre. No, sometimes it's lovely.
Yeah.
But it's also, I guess, can be quite an accessible art form in terms of you don't need a lot of equipment to put on a show. Yes, you do need a lot of equipment to put on a very high production value show, but actually, you know, you think of all of the possibilities when it's just two people talking to each other, or even one person talking to the audience.
Yeah.
That's quite radical as a proposition. I remember about 2008, a friend of mine went to Romania to make a documentary about theatre making under the Ceausescus, the dictators there. And I really sort of struck, I guess that was very early in my career, by how literally transformative that theatre space had been for people under a dictatorship, where they were able to send each other messages, like in a literal sense, but also more metaphorically.
Yeah.
They were able to meet their community, they were able to reaffirm who they were and their own resistance of the regime around them. We spoke to a number of theatre makers there, and part of what they very movingly talked about was the fact that you could put on a show in Romania at that time that totally passed the censorship laws. There was no problem putting on a production of this classic play, but everyone could still sit in the room and understand the subversive commentary that was being made about the regime by a text that still totally passed all the censors' heads.
Yeah.
And so the ability to kind of meet and resist through meeting was provided by theatre. So, you know, that's pretty important, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you can get a much stronger example of how impactful theatre can be. That's fantastic. So now we're going to open up the floor to some audience questions. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Yes. Person in the second row who I've been in there before.
I asked this question on behalf of Duns Players and Duns Playfest. In fact, the theatre community of Duns and Berwickshire. What advice would you give an emerged but still blossoming young playwright who may or may not be sitting beside you on the stage to encourage them to take their art to even greater heights?
It really always depends on the playwright. I'll pretend that there's one here. So I suppose I think it's important for playwrights, particularly at the moment. The funding climate is not amazing, so you can get very caught up in that. One of the things I think is important to think about is something Oprah said, like What did she say? She said something like, follow your own horse, keep your eyes on your own horse. I think there's a thing about thinking about what is under your control. What's under your control is how much time and effort and uh, interaction with your own work you have. What's not under your control is something like how good your friends are doing, or like, um, if you're banging your head against a brick wall by continually engaging with a part of the industry that isn't listening. Those things are less under your control. And what is under your control is kind of your investment in your own craft and development. And that, thankfully, is something that is also oftentimes free. You can listen to podcasts about playwriting, you can speak to actors about what their process is, you can bribe your friends to read your plays for you, even if they're not great at acting. It's all of those things are possible. And I have seen many times um, the way in which investment in that always pays off in some way or another, whereas investment in, say, hanging around theatre bars trying to meet influential people may or may not pay off. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
I think that's great advice, yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
Before I ask this question, can I just re-emphasise what Jamie said before, which is that Duns Playfest would absolutely not exist without Playwright Studio Scotland.
Yeah.
And that is a very nice example of the way that theatre activity drops seeds which you don't know what sort of tree it's going to grow into. And we're always going to be very grateful to Playwright Studio Scotland for their outreach programme in 2017, which gave rise to all this.
Is there a butt coming? It feels
No, no, it's pure gratitude.
Okay, thank you.
But the question is, do you have a favourite playwright? And who is it?
Favorite playwright? I would say honestly no, because it's like, what's your favorite song? Like, well, it's like what mood, what setting. I have playwrights who I'm sort of just in awe of their craft, because it feels so unique. I mean, I mean, guess what? Shakespeare's a pretty great playwright. I do think he's really good. Feels like very unfashionable sometimes to say things like that. The work that has stuck around for a very long time has stuck around for a reason. And I do try and go back and read, obviously Shakespeare, but I was reading recently Brian Friel is a playwright I hugely admire. Marina Carr, a playwright I had the good fortune to work with in Ireland. I think that's just an amazing and distinctive voice. When I think about our own homegrown playwrights, I think about a writer like Rona Munro, who again was my boss at Playwright Studio for a while. She was the chair for a long time. Linda McLean, who's a playwright who has just an extraordinary poeticism to her work. But honestly, there's so many playwrights that I cannot possibly pick a favorite, because I genuinely don't have one. It's also the act of writing, the act of creating something is such a brave one. Honestly, any of you that do it, and anyone who wants to, I really am sort of just in awe of the step that takes inside of someone. So I admire all playwrights for that reason. Hope that doesn't sound like a cop-out.
No, that's not. Any other questions? No?
I've got a question.
Yes.
When you're working as a dramaturg for a playwright, what do you commonly not correct them on, but what do you normally or more often notice that could be corrected?
So what comes up often? I suppose when people are just starting out, I think that the fundamental thing actually that always comes up is how much information to reveal and how much to let audiences put together.
Mm-hmm.
In one way or another, that's I think one of the fundamental challenges in playwriting, because you've got a story in your head and you understand all of the bits of it, you understand where all the characters have come from, you understand the story, and then what you're trying to do is just, I think of it sometimes like, a dinosaur kind of buried in sand. You're dusting off bits of the story so people can understand what they're seeing, but you can't really see what, because you know so much more than they do. Sometimes it can be difficult to check that you're giving away enough or not giving away too much, which is those are two sides of the same frustrating coin for the audience. So I would say that comes up quite a lot. And then I think just the fundamental thing about dramatic writing is that that things have to happen, and there's a real difference between people having a conversation and people having a dramatic conversation. So there's also that thing of going, what is each character doing in each scene that forwards the plot, or helps us understand something more, helps us dust off a bit more of the dinosaur. And I think particularly when people are starting out, there is a thing of getting caught up in the joy of conversation, which everyone should do, of course, but it's about it also still serving what you're trying to do with the play, because I think plays are like a lever, they're doing something. Having worked with quite a number of novelists now, I would say sometimes I have seen with novelists writing that it's more like, in a novel you can leave everything on the table and people can make their own conclusions later about what your meaning was, whereas with theatre, if they don't get what you're doing, they can't get the next bit. It's much more like a sort of Jenga tower of information and meaning.
Thank you.
Brilliant. If we don't have any more questions, I think we'll wrap up there. Yeah. Thank you for coming to talk to me today, Louise. Thank you. This episode of the Duns Playfest podcast was recorded in the Cadet Hall at Duns Playfest 2026. It was recorded by Luca Best, hosted and edited by yours truly, and my wonderful guest was Louise Stephens. I'd also like to thank all of the team in the Cadet Hall. That's Paula Young on sound, Keris Beadle on lighting, and Hattie Spence and Lily Peed in front of house. A massive thank you as ever goes to our amazing festival producer Sarah Best, and to our brilliant board of trustees. I'd also like to thank Stacey and David, all of our audience who came to watch these interviews in the Cadet Hall, and you for listening. We'll be back soon with the next episode, which features Aisling Findlay Carroll from Performing Arts Studio Scotland, with three of her students Oliver, Lyle and Alex. See you then.